Today I'm going to try to draw the side of this basilica in Krakow, Poland. The first thing I'm going to do here is mark this general area where the path ends, because that marks our vanishing point. But hey, hold on a second, I hear you say. What's a vanishing point? Well, a few days ago, or weeks ago, I don't know. I'll never know exactly when I said anything, so you're just gonna have to trust me. But a few videos back, I was talking about how I recalled learning something in the past about perspective, sort of in passing, but I'd forgotten it since. All I remembered was that first you had to find your horizon, which is just the height of your eye line. So any horizontal line that would lie on your horizon would be parallel with that line. But as you move away from it, like say if you were standing on the ground, the roof of a building would be well above your horizon. And that would mean that the sides that face away from you, if that makes sense, wouldn't be parallel, but directed toward something instead in the distance, which I couldn't remember in that video. And even now, as you can tell, I'm getting confused. But I knew that there were these points off to the sides. I just didn't remember their significance. So it didn't really help me at the time. So I spent some time watching some YouTube videos on perspective, and I remembered, it refreshed my memory, that those points are called vanishing points. Unfortunately for you, while I may be able to loosely apply what I learned in those videos, it is still clearly a bit fuzzy, as you can tell from my atrocious explanation. So relaying that information back to you is probably not a great idea just yet. But anyway, here I have that back corner as a broad vanishing point. It's not perfect, but it made for a guide. And as you can see, I actually gave that area some shape right away, drawing the triangle that's made up of the leaves, the wall, and the ground. You can see it clearly in the reference. I don't know what made me do that, but it helped me a lot through the rest of the drawing. It made drawing in the path much simpler, which gave me, the grass on either side, as well as a rough guide to the bottom of that leftmost structure. I hope you can visualize all this. So yeah, it's taking time, don't get me wrong, but I am learning things. And it feels really good to be able to immediately put some of those things into practice. Having the vanishing point ultimately helped me with all of those horizontal lines of the buildings on the right side. They're all pointing to the same place, like the roofs, which admittedly should be further left than my vanishing point. But it cut me some slack. I learned it last night. For this one, I'm blocking in all of the silhouettes first, not really focusing on any details just yet. Like I've said, this is something I've gone back and forth on throughout this series so far, and I'm sure I'll continue to do so. But for whatever reason, I don't know, it just made sense for me to do it that way in this one. I had a lot of different shapes to work with here, so getting everything laid out as simply as possible in the beginning meant that I could spend time later working out more of the details. Speaking of that, while scouring the web for perspective tips last night, I also stumbled upon an answer to a question I asked in, I think, yesterday's video. See, I don't know. It could have been days ago. But I was talking about how to properly start a drawing. And I asked rhetorically whether or not, quote unquote, experts, I do think it was yesterday, would all agree about one way or another regarding sequence of events. You can go watch the video in case you missed it. Maybe it was yesterday, maybe not. Go watch them all just in case. But anyway, It seems there is absolutely no consensus, and there really is no correct way. I searched far and wide and found all sorts of people saying that they do or don't like this or that. And honestly, that gave me some comfort. I think having these big, general, lightly sketched outlines will be helpful for me most often. But I think it'll just depend on what I'm drawing. And also, I don't know what I'm talking about this stage. So tomorrow could very well have me feeling the opposite way. But according to some strangers on the internet, there is no right way. The rigid perfectionist in me dreads that slightly. I'd love a right and a wrong way, so I know I'm on the right path. But that rigid perfectionist most likely loathes this whole process, so he's not in charge anyway. I've had to let go of a lot of mental and emotional constraints with respect to this process, from the drawing itself to drawing in public to drawing poorly to posting poorly drawn drawings on the internet to talking into a microphone about my poorly drawn drawings. It's pretty much all been, for me, an exercise in getting out of my own way, which certainly isn't easy. But in the long run, ideally, it'll make me a better artist. All right, so now that everything for the most part is blocked in, I'm starting to get some of those details drawn. And this drawing felt markedly different from others. And that's because I go into it pretty with a pretty carefree manner. Uh, it might have something to do with watching those other artists online do their thing. But whatever the case, I felt incredibly confident and relaxed here. Something I've spoken about ad nauseum. And I think some of that shows, some of it shines through. Maybe it also has to do with all that's going on in this scene, but it could also be because, I had everything all blocked in, which gave me the freedom to be a little bit more lax. Or, and this is probably the answer, it's a mix of all those things and more. A bunch of things I don't even recognize. I'm curious to see just how much I don't know about my own process, even after years of doing this, because now I'm mostly in the dark. Will that change? I really doubt it. I think I'll just find new things about which I can be ignorant. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know, I guess. At this stage, I'm doing a lot of looking up and down. My eye is also bouncing from one thing to another. And while it can be daunting to figure out what I should do next, what I should draw next, it's also pretty fun to feel this. The bouncing around happens to me more than anything. I don't feel like I'm choosing where to look or what to focus on. And it can be an exciting part of this process. It's sort of like one side of my brain is taking the reins for this part. And it's interesting because even though I tend to spend a few minutes, sometimes up to like 15 minutes, just gazing at the scene before I even sit down to draw, it's not in those moments, it's in these that you're watching now when I really start to notice things. The curvature of the roof, the individual shapes of the leaves directly above me versus maybe those in the distance, the depth or shallowness of the windows. Things like these seem to come into focus much clearer during this stage. It's all stuff I don't really notice when I'm looking at the general scene. I think because when I'm just looking at the scene in preparation for a drawing, I'm looking at the overall composition more than anything. I'm looking at the proportion. I'm looking at, where certain lines converge, or am I going to draw all the details in this or not, so that when I'm in the actual drawing, I can actually pay attention to these tiny, minute little details that ultimately make the drawing a lot more fun. It's not really those big broad lines that are so fun. It's definitely the small stuff, at least for me. Doing this also means that my hand bounces around a lot, which can make it harder to focus on accurately drawing the things that I'm looking at. But I do think the loose, sort of erratic gestures are part of the fun. And they definitely help me get out of my head. One thing I have been thinking about tangentially is these vertical references versus horizontal ones. For the sake of this split screen layout that you're watching and you've watched in all the other videos, if I want to stick with this, I'm relegated to these vertical scenes. If I wanted to draw horizontal ones, I would need to either film from much farther away and then ignore the space on the top and bottom of the frame, drawing sort of just a slice out of the middle, which I don't really want to do. I don't think that'll look nice. Or I would have to find an entirely different way to lay out these videos. In my photography, I do my best to champion the horizontal frame. There's something about it that I find incredibly satisfying compared to vertical photos. And that's had an effect on my ability to find references for drawing. They're obviously out there, but it's weird. Since I also like to take photos while I'm out looking for drawings to draw, I'm sort of living between these two worlds, not just in the medium, but in what I'm looking for. If I see a scene that I would like to photograph, most likely I can't draw it. Or at least make a video of drawing it, because 95% of the time it's going to be horizontal. I've had to shift my mind a bit, change what I'm looking for, but only to a certain extent. I don't want my drawing eye to impede my photography eye or vice versa, but multitasking like that is not my forte. So anyway, I think I'm going to have to compartmentalize these two processes, or find a way to draw horizontally sometimes without having to restructure this whole setup. I guess I could turn it 90 degrees, making it a vertical video so that the top would be a horizontal reference and the bottom would be a horizontal drawing, maybe for YouTube Shorts or something. But I don't think I have the time or energy to do both of those right now. What do you think about that? Do you think vertical references are fine, or does it matter to you at all? Okay, so wow, this one was actually a lot of fun for me. I keep surprising myself when it comes to these references that I initially think will be really complicated. It looks like there's just so much going on, too many shapes, and when I walk up to it, it's really daunting. But I've come away with a few of them pretty satisfied. So I'd love to know what you think. So please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow.